You're listening to the Valley Current.
Hey, Jack.
Hey, Owen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. What's life like in Seattle right now?
We got a big rainstorm coming in, but that's not that unusual for this time of year.
You've been there for a while, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
Were you born there too?
No. I was actually born on the eastern side of the mountain. Have you spent much time up here in Washington?
I'm actually a member of the bar in the state of Washington as well.
That's what you said, yeah. Well, eastern Washington is like desert. It's more like California than it is. It's high desert, so maybe kind of like New Mexico. But I was born and raised in central Washington and raised on a little fruit orchard that my parents had and in a little town called Sela. 4,000 people there, one stoplight.
It's a farming town, right?
Yeah. They had 20 acres of pears and a few cherries and apples, but it's changed a lot over there. But most of it was agriculture at the time.
Yeah, state of Washington is big on apples still, isn't it?
For sure. Yeah, right? Yeah. I just saw that they had lost because of tariffs under the Trump administration. They lost their whole India market, which is coming back now. Yeah, ouch. It cut their shipments by like 30% overall worldwide.
So how did you gravitate to the big city and a cybersecurity practice? Because that's a pretty modern gravitation both ways, because you were a farm boy, right?
Yeah, actually, my parents lost the farm when I was about 5, so we moved into the city. But it's still small town America, and went to school with a lot of agricultural people. So I didn't know what I was going to do, and I was wanted to become a pastor. I was headed towards the ministry.
Okay,
I was going to become a Lutheran pastor, and I went to college because I needed to study Greek in the Lutheran tradition.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that Greek was required for the Lutheran tradition.
Yeah. It's a pretty strong requirement. They want you to study, the ancient Greek and a little bit of Aramaic and Hebrew and everything. So there were only 2 schools that offered it in Washington State, and I wanted to stay in the state. And one was the University of Washington. The other was a little school called Pacific Lutheran University. And I figured a smaller school would be better. So I ended up going to PLU and graduated with a degree in psychology. Didn't take any kind of computers courses or business or anything like that. Was headed towards the ministry, but I had a kind of a mentor of mine that had said that, hey, if you're going to be a minister, the most important thing you can do is work a real job, because you sit in the pulpit 10 minutes a week, and it might take you 10 hours to write the sermon, but the majority of what you do is you're talking to people,
right.
You're counseling,
right?
And a lot of what people want to talk about is their job, their relationship, or their money, or their job. If you've never worked a day in your life, then how can you be empathetic towards them? I thought that was pretty good advice. So I looked for a job, but I just had a BA in psychology, so had a tough time finding it. And this was 1983, right after the IBM came out with the PC. And they had a little microcomputer lab there that they were letting, they had about 12 IBM PCs, and they were letting the neighborhood people use them because they were so expensive at the time. And so I had a classmate that he was working on a program to computerize the churches, the Lutheran churches in the Pacific Northwest. And it was a pilot program, and he wanted to go study. He was still an undergrad. I had graduated. And so he had decided that he was going to go over and study in Denmark for 6 months. And so he conned me into taking over for him. Okay. And I just caught on. It seemed easy. I enjoyed it, and never looked back. I stayed.
So you're really kind of like self-study, a little bit like
self-taught completely. Yeah, never took a class. Never took a class. Nothing.
Interesting, because I can tell you that when I was in school, which was a Jesuit Catholic high school, I thought I was going to become a priest. And then ultimately, of course, girls entered the picture, and lots of things changed in college. And in college, we programmed on mainframes. This is the 1970s.
Right.
And it was pretty obvious that sooner or later someone was going to come out with something better than buying time on a mainframe or even a mini computer.
Yeah.
And eventually, really, Jobs and Wozniak came into my first law firm where, when I became a lawyer, it's a long story.
I heard that on one of you mentioned that in one of your podcasts.
Right. It's a good story, but they didn't invent the personal computer. They copied it. I mean, they basically copied a bunch of other people that were selling parts and doing this homebrew club.
Yep.
And they said, we can package this, and it's a merchandising deal. It's just about marketing. You got to come up with a good name.
Same thing with Bill Gates and Microsoft.
Right. I mean, a lot of people don't know the reason they chose Apple beyond, we talked about Apple's in Washington State, but beyond that is that they thought the way to get penetration was not direct head on into businesses. It was getting the computer to sit like an apple on the front teacher's desk in K through 12. Yeah. And then the parents would eventually see this machine, or the kids would come home and say, hey, my teacher has this thing on her desk. It's like a high-powered calculator. It's a personal computer.
Sure.
And she says that basically sooner or later, we're going to have to learn this. And they wanted to turn the teachers into essentially their sales force because they didn't figure any other way in.
Yeah.
I think that the name Apple was kind of brilliant from that perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? Because it has the imagery of you're going to get these machines placed right on the desk and all of a sudden everything's going to change. But then you gravitate to cybersecurity and you're an expert in that field. You got a firm that does, I guess your website is cybersecureteam.com. And we all know that cybersecurity is a large and growing field. And there's lots of public companies now. Years ago, there weren't. Yeah. And they seem to be proliferating and doing better and better. Zscaler is off the charts. I met the CEO, and he was basically a nobody, and now he's a billionaire.
Yeah.
Immigrant, by the way. Lots of immigrants in this field. Yeah. And so I'm kind of curious, what made you, you've explained how you got involved in computers in the 1980s, but what made you gravitate towards cybersecurity?
So I started out when I was working in the microcomputer lab. Within 15 months, I and another guy started our own firm, and we did IT consulting at the time. And it was much different back then. Of course, there was no internet or anything, and so we were mostly focusing on training people how to use the computers. And kind of gradually, I've been doing the same thing for like the last 35 years, and it's just kind of morphed into the number one thing I'm responsible for is, keeping the hackers out now. Right. And so the last 10 years or so, I've been a managed service provider, basically a fractional CIO kind of guy, and doing IT support and network maintenance and cybersecurity for companies. And I just felt like, one of the things we did was we did the employee cybersecurity awareness training. And I just felt like I could make a bigger difference if I was doing that instead of having to do all the other stuff too. So I've kind of just put all my eggs in one basket and am doing cybersecurity by itself now. And like you say,
it's a big and growing basket. So
it's not going to shrink at any time. It's low risk for the people that are doing it, in the Eastern Bloc, and there's a lot of nations that part of their economy is based on it. And so it's just going to continue. And with the proliferation of AI, it's just getting more complex and more sophisticated. And, so people need to know what to do and how to combat it.
A lot of people don't realize that literally overseas countries approve of entities that exist for the purpose of hacking into computers in the US and Europe and elsewhere, Western countries, on the view that it's like Robin Hood. If you can break in and get whatever you can get, it's like wealth distribution. It's okay. Right. And I guess they must tax it like it's income, even though it's obviously illegal proceeds.
Exactly. Right? It's not only do they just allow it, but they sanction it and set them up. They set up their own employees to do that. And Anybody that does it on their own, it's like you say, they tax or take a commission out of it or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, like North Korea, the estimates are that a lot of their income comes from that kind of thing.
Right. And it's not going to stop because basically we're in a war. You could argue it is kind of a World War III, but it's all being done under the curtain of the internet.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, like what's really burning in my mind is whenever I talk to someone who's a cybersecurity expert is what do you do when you get a bunch of stuff that looks like phishing or spam? Because you're probably on, given that you're in Seattle, you're probably on Office 365, right? As half of the world is, or 3/4 of the world is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, we use all the tools that we recommend for everybody. But, part of it is just seeing so much of it and seeing what happens to our prospects and clients that don't pay attention to it. And they're not training their employees and they're not using firewalls or antivirus and or they're using, lower powered ones that don't have subscriptions or whatever. And so, we see all that happen all the time. And so I think we're a little bit more aware of it. And we really have to be because, we're the number one target for the hackers because if they can get into our system, we have all of our clients that we get into too. So whereas if they just target a law firm or a dentist's office or whatever, that's a one-off thing. But if they can get into a company like mine, then they have me and they have, 25, 30, 40, however many clients I have too.
Right.
And because we do the support, the remote support, we've got a direct conduit into them. And so they're able to get into it. So yeah, we're targeted all the time. So we've got to be really careful.
So the one I wanted to show you that we keep getting, and I keep explaining to all the people in the firm, look, you can't be signing these things that look like Microsoft DocuSign document or Microsoft documents. I'll give you an example. This is a good example, right? And people, I think, have become more sensitive. I'm going to put it up on the screen because I'm sure you see this all the time. And, we always say to Microsoft, this is phishing. And I think we have all the subscription Microsoft tools, but maybe we don't. I'm pretty sure we do. But here's something that says, you've seen this before, right? This is .online signed via computer law. They've got our brand with R with a circle. And it's by some guy, he didn't even hide his name at McRae's Tavern.
Yeah.
It says, view completed document. Obviously you can't press on that. That's going to create all sorts of havoc. But it looks very official. And of course, it's got the Microsoft name, which is kind of a trademark infringement.
Oh, absolutely.
And, this keeps coming in over and over again. And we, of course, mark it as phishing. And you would think somehow maybe that would deep six this guy or everything from McRae'sTavern.com, which, of course, could be someone that's legit that maybe themselves have been hacked, right? If you think about it.
Absolutely. They spoof legitimate companies all the time.
So now that Microsoft has thrown Copilot into the mix, there are people who are really like, well, let me peek into it and let Summary by Copilot look into it. And I think that's going to be a trigger for causing problems in the future as well, right?
I agree. Yeah. One of the things we have in our offering is we've got something called Catch Fish, which if you get a suspicious email, you can plug, basically it's a plug-in into Outlook.
Right.
And you just drop it into that and it'll look it up and tell you whether it's truly a phishing email or if it's legitimate.
Or if it's spam.
Or it could be spam too. Yeah.
And if I do report phishing, here's the other weird thing. If I do report phishing, which I'm going to do right now because I think it is, eventually I get an error message that says something weird comes back by email. I've never seen this before. Something weird comes back by email. Let's see if I could find it. That says, well,
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's a note to self kind of thing.
Yeah, here it is. Questionable URLs detected, right? I don't know why Microsoft's not sending back an email that says, thank you for doing this. It sends back this thing that says questionable URLs detected in And it's just another waste of time, right?
Yeah,
I don't really know why they're doing it. I don't get it. I don't get what they're doing here.
Yeah, the problem is that they're so inundated with it. I mean, right now, I can't tell you how many new accounts are set up on the Microsoft,
right.
The Office 365.
Right.
I get probably 100 emails a day from onmicrosoft.com that are just somebody setting it up for phishing. And, Microsoft's trying to shut it down as quick as they can, but they can't do it fast enough.
I mean, maybe the laws are just too weak. In other words, maybe anyone that is directly or indirectly involved in phishing should end up going to federal prison for like 10 years.
Yeah.
It's gotta be really, really horrendous.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think that's going to solve the problem, because you don't see, I mean, you do see them, but there's not that many people here in Western democracy that are actually doing it. The problem, like we talked about before, is that almost everybody is in an Eastern Bloc country. They're in Bulgaria or Russia or North Korea or whatever. And like we talked about, the government there not only is just saying, yeah, that's fine, go ahead and do it, but hey, give us some money for it. So they're actually incentivized to do it.
Right. So do you see this ever becoming subject to AI being smart enough to somehow go through it and really make it so your mailbox, because I think half of the mail that comes in, I mean, maybe it's a high estimate, but I think there's a lot of spam still, and a lot of solicitations and a lot of nonsense that you would think there would be a way to screen it out. And as much as you spend time saying this is junk, this needs to be screened out, we haven't really tamed our mailboxes, and they seem to be open doors. Now, I guess there are people that kind of force kind of a password approach on mail, where they're just completely changing the approach.
Right.
But what do you do when you come in as a fractional CIO, which I know you do, and you hear lots of complaints from various employees and others about what's going on? Like, I'm sure you assess what it is that they have, but what's your standard way of thinking about improving? Because it does reduce productivity. There's absolutely no question about that, right?
Yeah, well, there's two questions there. I think the one thing that we do with our clients is it's kind of like what they say about bank tellers. How do you tell a counterfeit? You handle a lot of good, real money. And so then all of a sudden you see it. And so our approach is train the employees, because like IBM says that 90% of all data breaches happen because of a human error. And the majority of those are somebody clicking on a bad link or going to a bad website. So if you train the employees, you're going to reduce the effect on your organization to almost nothing, as long as you have all the rest of the stuff. You have a good firewall, you have good antivirus and everything. Mm-hmm. But the other problem is that you asked if AI can help out. Well, it can, and I think it's going to help. But we're in a war, like you talked about before. Mm-hmm. Not only is AI available to us to tell which emails are fake and which are suspicious, but the bad guys are using it too. Right. And so they're getting more sophisticated. And so I don't think it's ever going to get to a point where we can eliminate it, unless you can have world peace and everybody, agrees to the same kind of penalties for criminals. Right. But as long as you've got organizations that are, or countries that are supporting it, they're always going to continue to try. And the thing about it, it's like the biggest problem with spam is that it's free. You can send out 1 million and get 10 responses, which in any other kind of marketing would never work. Right. But because it's free to send it, then you're still making money.
Right. And we represented many years ago Paul Bixby. He's still around, but Paul was so adamant in attacking what was initially fax machine spam. Yeah, so there is kind of a cost to it with the paper running through it on both sides, right? There's some cost, some phone cost. But then he turned his attention to email spam. And, it was amazing that we engaged in a number of lawsuits on his behalf I mean, those people were pretty well funded, and they fought on like some First Amendment grounds. Like they had a right to do whatever they wanted to do,
right,
regardless of what the spam laws have to say about it. And there are some pretty strong spam laws, but most of the entities don't have any assets. By the time you win the judgment, you don't collect anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So am I hearing correctly that a lot of where your checklist goes is basically start with the employee sensitivity, the employee training? I went to your website. I'll put it up on the screen. It looks like the opening screen is very much about training employees, and you have a book, it sounds like, called How to Train Your Employees on How to Recognize a Cyber Attack, right?
Yeah, we have a variety of tools. Essentially, we sell an entire platform that not only does it provide annual training, which a lot of companies do, we call it micro training. And the reason for that is that the vector changes all the time. You know, the bad guys figure out different ways, and it's always evolving. And so, and the other thing is if you just do something once a year, you're never going to be up to speed on it. You know, you have to do it regularly. It's just like, you know, if you're a police officer and you only go to shooting training once a year, you're not going to be a very good shot. They go out and they practice every week or whatever. Same thing here. But so we have the platform that does the training in our whole, we try to make it interesting. You know, we have kind of a CIS kind of movie for people to watch, and then some questions to ask them. And then the micro training takes about 4 to 5 minutes every week. We gamify the whole thing, and they get a score.
Oh, that's smart. Oh, that's really smart.
It makes it a little bit more fun, and the score also allows the management to look at it and see where their weakest links are. And you know, the employees that are constantly falling for these things, and you either get rid of them or you train them better so that they don't do it anymore.
It's like an intelligence test that's sent out as a game, and I guess it's so like, is someone so mesmerized by the stuff that comes in that they just decide they have to click to get kind of the dopamine hit, right?
You know, sometimes it's that. Sometimes they're just busy. And I mean, that's where most of the mistakes happen. Somebody's in a rush and doing something, and they get a fake email that looks like it's real, and they just click on it. And once you've clicked on it, you're in trouble. Yeah,
Hillary Clinton found out the hard way. I guess it was her chief of staff that got sucked in to something that resulted in the transfer of all of her emails, which of course ended up getting dumped and disclosed right before the election, which was just a disaster for her.
It was.
So many things would have been different. So you have a firm, you do training, but you also do the technical side as well, right?
Well, so yeah, I have a company called Dependable IT Support, which offers local IT support up here in the Tacoma, Seattle area. But the cybersecure team is more of we can help anybody anywhere. And I'm kind of morphing from the cyber or from the IT support to the isolated or standalone cybersecurity business.
Right. So how do people reach you if they, other than through the website, which is on the screen, cybersecureteam.com? Would they call you if they want to sort of vet you a little further, or would you prefer them just to buy it online and engage in it as opposed to using your personal services or that of your team?
Sure, they can call us or they can write us. If you go to cybersecureteam.com /Owen Wollum, which is my bio. It's got my email address up there. It's just Owen@cybersecureteam.com, and they can write us there. The other thing is that if somebody wants to get started, we have a 30-day 100% guarantee. They can try it and see if they like it. And we've got a special offer for your listeners if if somebody wants to get started right away.
Right. What do they do?
Go to cybersecureteam.com in the name of your podcast.
Okay. So that's useful. So people who know, because we get viewers that kind of want to understand, what can I do? A lot of them, of course, won't buy anything unless it's from one of the big 5 companies like Microsoft, Google, Apple. They just think, hey, they must have this. But the truth is they don't, or at least they don't promote it. I mean, Microsoft has some additional tools. I don't know why they don't just batch it all into 365 and just treat it like everyone just should get it. Like they have to upsell some of this stuff. It seems to me it's unfortunate.
Yeah. I think in time, they will incorporate it. They'll buy somebody that does the training and incorporate it, but they've got bigger fish to fry too.
So I just went to where someone would go, including, I guess you even have some Office 365 productivity training as well.
We're just rolling that out. It's going to be micro training every week. We'll show them how to do something in Word or Excel or Outlook. Okay. But that's if you click on the order page from the home page, it'll take you there. But if somebody that's listening to this wants a discount, if they go to cybersecureteam.com Valley Current, they'll get almost a 50% discount.
Oh, that's great. That's useful. So final question, these computers are getting faster and faster, and people are now talking about computers that may be able to be so fast and so elegant and efficient that they can figure out passwords, because they can basically permutate in immense speeds. And of course, we're knocking on wood and hoping that none of these really fast computers are going to make their way into the overseas market, but they probably will sooner or later. Yeah. And so where are we going in trying to deal with that problem? Because it's almost at a level where if the computers can outrace every tool that we have, even passwords are not sacrosanct anymore. Like passwords are going to be able to be deciphered.
Yeah, and that's the reason, right? There's a movement to move away from passwords right now, too. I think you'll see within the next 5 years that passwords will be as antique as a Model T. They'll use biometric devices to tell if it's you. And there's some other things that people are working on, too. But, it's just not the speed. It's also the AI technology, too, that is allowing people to figure things out. But it's the age-old fight that we're in. Is that we get a little bit better at protecting ourselves from the bad guys, and then they get a little bit better, and we're constantly going back and forth in fighting that little war there.
And when people hear that the U.S. files a suit against or files a criminal case against 14 Russian hackers, and they think, oh, great, we're going to put those 14 guys in jail. Those guys are in Russia. There's no extradition treaty. Vladimir Putin is not going to send them over saying, oh, those are the bad guys. Those 14 people are going to get on an Aeroflot plane and fly into New York to receive a copy of your indictment. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. It's all for show. It has no real bite to it.
Yeah, and those are the guys that are working for Vladimir Putin that are getting the stuff that he wants. So
last comment or last question.
Sure.
Are you concerned, as I am, that maybe we're going to just see social media and email accounts and YouTubes and Twitters and others just get inundated with what comes out of the election cycle? Because usually that's basically 6 months before the election, and we're coming up on that, right? The election's in November. It'll be like April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. So maybe in May, it just starts cranking up, maybe before then.
It's already started. I just saw that the State Department had just said that they're already seeing it happen for this election cycle, and it'll just get worse. There's no question about it.
I'll end with this remark. You'll crack up. My father refused to have email.
Yeah.
He had a personal computer. Of course, he died at 90, but he was alive long enough to basically have a computer and an email account. He refused to have a cell phone.
Yeah.
He refused to have a credit card. If you do a search on him, you can't find him in any electronic trace. He is basically hidden.
Yeah.
Because he was not on the grid, the electronic grid that we're all on. Once you have a cell phone, you have an email account, you have a credit card, and of course you have social media. Your whole friggin' life is disclosed on there.
Yeah.
He had none of that. Zero.
I don't know.
My mom had to loan him her credit card when they rented a car. He'd show up at the counter with a bunch of cash in hand, and the clerk would be like, I don't take cash. Do you see a cash register here? My mom would loan him her credit card because she was in the 21st century and he wasn't. But he was off grid.
He'd have a tough time now. I mean, there's so many places that don't even take cash anymore.
Right. So it's an interesting thing when you think about, well, if you really want to be hidden, you have to be like off grid. And I noticed something recently that Apple did where if you order something, they ask, do you want us to create a fabricated email address that we can use for the order? And then we'll forward it to your Apple account and then we'll destroy the email address.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is really interesting. Like it's becoming this whole duel of I'm going to try to hide as best as possible.
It's a constant battle. I don't know. Have you seen the new? Well, it's not new. It's been out for a couple of years, but it's a show called Reacher.
No,
it's a great show. I can't remember if it's on Apple or Netflix or wherever, but it's about a guy it's basically what he does. He lives off grid. And he's kind of solving all these problems, but
in the Pacific Northwest or where?
No, he's all over the place.
Okay,
yeah,
well, that's interesting. Well, good luck with your new practice and your new cybersecureteam.com offerings. We'll get this out. You've been a great guest, and hopefully the next big cyber attack that happens, which will probably be tomorrow, we'll have you come back on to kind of dissect what human error happened that would have been prevented by your training.
Well, I'd be happy to come on.
Big one happens.
Sure, I'd be happy to come on, Jack. I appreciate your time and letting me be on here.
All right, talk to you later. Take care.
All right.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.